We just finished up week 3 of the Senate Appropriations hearings. This is our final week, and on Monday we spoke with Secretary Russ Redding, Department of Agriculture, and I talked to him about 3 things. I talked to him about the TransSource high voltage power transmission lines, which sought to take preserved farmland for a right-of-way to build these high voltage power transmission lines, and great concern to the people in the community and a great concern all across the Commonwealth. If pristine, preserved farmland is going to be taken, the landowner and the taxpayer who's invested in that preservation needs to be adequately compensated. Also spoke to Secretary Redding about the incident this summer at the York Fair with the ride and the need to have timely reports. There was a lot of concern in the community, and people need to know that rides are being inspected and that the rides that they put their children on at the York Fair and fairs all across the Commonwealth are safe. And lastly, we talked about the growing industrial hemp crop and the new crop here in the Commonwealth. It's being grown in York County. We have a processor in York County, and just how things are going with that industry, what they have been finding along the way. We've passed a lot of regulations, and oftentimes we realize that while very well intentioned, we can sometimes hamper or impede the success of a potential cash crop and a great new industry for the Commonwealth. On Tuesday, we met with all of the presidents of the state-related universities, Penn State, Pitt, Temple, and Lincoln. Talked to them about the student loan crisis that we have here in the Commonwealth, college affordability, and making sure that potential students understand the financial implications of what they're getting themselves into. We also spoke with Thaddeus Stevens and Pennsylvania College of Technology. Really impressed. They're doing a phenomenal job of connecting students with the training and the jobs that we really need to see here in this Commonwealth for our economy and our Commonwealth to be successful, and was very impressed with how flexible and nimble they are to be able to respond to employers here in the Commonwealth and transitioning the programs that they have to meet the needs of both students and employers. And we also spoke with the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, and I asked questions about the Agile contract. And that's probably getting really down deep in the weeds, but from a financial perspective, the governor has signed a contract that says all of the money that's made from the monetization of assets in each department will go back to those departments. I want to make sure that if they are profiting in any way off of taxpayer-owned state assets, that money goes back into the general fund for the legislature to make a determination as to what we're going to do with those resources. It's your money. On the last day of appropriations here in the Senate, spoke with Secretary McDonnell from the Department of Environmental Protection, talked to him about some issues that are of great concern back home in York County, and one of those is, again, high voltage power transmission lines. What we're seeing is that Maryland is no longer generating their own power. They're relying on Pennsylvania to do that. This proposed project down in the southeastern part of the county was going to reduce the cost of energy in the Maryland suburbs of Washington, D.C., and what we learned is it was going to actually raise the rates of Pennsylvania energy consumers. Not acceptable. And have great concern about the governor's proposal to join something called RGGI and what that's going to do to Pennsylvania energy ratepayers. Also talked about the permitting process. I have received so many concerns and complaints from individuals, from local governmental entities, and from businesses about how difficult it is to get a permit from the Department of Environmental Protection. It's not timely, it's expensive, and of course time is money, and how frustrating it is. And I said, why can't a permit through the Department of Environmental Protection be like purchasing something off of Amazon, where I can track it through the entire process from my order until it arrives on my doorstep? Was encouraged that Secretary McDonnell agreed that they can do things better. And then lastly, had the opportunity to talk about special funds. As you all well know, special funds have been of great concern to me. And what I said was tracking the use of special funds by the Department of Environmental Protection. Well, it was like trying to untangle necklaces thrown in a jewelry box by my daughter when she was a little girl. Really tedious and really time consuming. And I asked him to walk through what exactly they're doing with that money. This is one of the ways that people play games in Harrisburg with your money. And the last budget hearing that we had for this entire process was with Secretary Jen Swales. She is the governor's budget secretary, and talked about all of those things that we talk about all year long. Making sure that the budget is transparent, that we don't engage in these budget shenanigans or maneuvers, understanding where all these special funds are going. We talked about the Office of Inspector General's report where they purchased $160,000 worth of firearms that they are not legally allowed to use. What's going to happen to those? Does this happen anywhere else? And we talked about supplemental spending. Supplemental spending is where the governor overspends last year's budget, and then before we enter into this budget process, we have to go back and pay for what he spent last year above and beyond what had been appropriated to him. Representative Seth Grove and I have legislation that would put an end to this type of spending, and it would ensure that anytime the governor seeks to overspend the budget and the money he's been appropriated, he has to come back to the General Assembly for approval. Thank you. It's been a long 3 weeks, but it's been a very illuminating 3 weeks. And please know that as we continue through this budget process, we will always remember to put the taxpayer first.